My name is Ruben van der Brink, and as of spring last year, I am appointed CTO of AMS-IX, the Amsterdam Internet Exchange. So what do when you just join this kind of organization? You look at the people working there, you get to know the platform, the kind of systems that we use, and there was a lot of things we could do. We were in the middle of selecting a new vendor for a switching platform, so it was a very busy time already. But then finally, after half a year, I got the opportunity to get all the senior technical people in one room, right, and to really discuss the technical roadmap, right? At this point, one of our senior engineers, he asked me, but Ruben, what kind of exchange do we want to be? And I was kind of puzzled. I said, "This is a beautiful question, right?" Because at first thought, you could say, how many types are there? You know, you want to be the biggest. You want to be the best with the best SLA, or you want to be the cheapest, optimized for cost. But then thinking about those things, I really thought there's got to be a bit of a deeper answer here, right? So you circle back to your vision, and the vision of AMS-IX is to create a better society through better internet. And that's beautiful, but what does it actually mean? It basically two questions, like what is a better society and what is a better internet? Well, I think what constitutes a better society is definitely a matter of culture, right, and politics. You could say a better society, children learn how to distinguish real information from fake information. In a better society, the government holds the technology to survey its people. In a better society, it's easy to start a digital services company, right? So you boost economic growth. There's a lot of different answers that you can get if you want to address this, right? And what is a better internet? Well, this is also a very interesting question, and I'm sure that we would get a lot of different answers if I ask it to the people in this room today, right? For sure, for a better internet, you need connected fibers, right? So there are a few things that are common to everybody. It's why we wholeheartedly support the Keep Ukraine Connected initiative of the Global MENOG Alliance. We think it's very important that we keep the internet running globally. But then, for instance, is a free internet a better internet? And at what kind of cost would a free internet come, right? It's commendable that you give access to the internet and that there's low barriers for it, right? But what is the cost in terms of privacy, for instance? So how's the Middle East doing at the moment? And I think that you've seen a lot of great presentations yesterday and more coming today, which give a lot of data on the region. And for me, it was very interesting to learn and to see how the internet is developing here in the Middle East. So if I look, and I was an attendant of the Day Zero event where we were talking about IXPs in the region, and you see that a couple of things are going on. For instance, there's tremendous bandwidth growth, right? Especially with the use of smartphones, we see that the traffic is really going up. But also, IP transit is coming at a very, very high cost. And I've learned that that's mainly because there are cross-border connections that are much more expensive than in some other regions. So this is definitely prohibitive to creating a more interconnected region. So did learn that a lot of the content providers are also already in this region, AWS, Tencent, Google being one of a few of them. It's great to see that the submarine cables are also really finding the Middle East, because they are definitely a source of growth in the future. For us, we also look at the MENOG, which is now in operation for a little over 2 years. It's great to see that the numbers of peers there is still growing, and they've recently hit the 0.5 terabit peak, and we're very proud of that, so we want to congratulate them on that fact. So what kind of exchange do you want to be? For AMS-IX, we've been thinking about it as a result of this question that I got, and we came up with neutrality, online safety, and sustainability. Now, I would say currently the biggest pillar of these three is definitely the neutrality part, right? But just before this talk, I was talking to Max, and we were thinking neutrality is a very hard thing to define, right? So it's hard to make a definition and test whether an IXP is neutral or not, right? If you're a commercial IX, are you still neutral? If you have a partnership with a certain data center, are you still neutral? There's a lot of these things and these questions that are answered, but we should, right? It is important that we think about neutrality. Online safety. I think we have to be neutral and impartial, right? There is a lot to like about a neutral internet. As an infrastructure, you know, we shouldn't care about the message that's going on, but we do care about any adverse effects that we can see, because technology is never neutral, right? As soon as you start using technology, secondary effects start to happen, and we do see that we don't want to. I'd say we really care about the possible negative effects that come from it. It's not just security, right? Of course, everybody hates DDoS attacks, hijackings, all those things. We're trying to find technical solutions to prevent it. But also up to the point that democracy is being threatened by the use of the internet, and in much more effective ways that we could have ever imagined. I mean, those are the things that we really do care about. We can't do anything about them from a neutrality perspective, but we do care about them. So how, as an internet exchange, could you address those things? Finally, technology always used to be part of the solution of creating a more environmental friendly world. But increasingly we see that it's becoming part of the problem, right? With the use of digital services rising, you get these calculations. Every search on Google can make a light bulb burn for years in a row or something. It's really these comparisons that show that there is an actual footprint of the use of digital data or digital services, right? Watching a movie on Netflix at night, I mean, it takes power, and there's a whole chain of suppliers which contribute to that. So we can only address this bigger problem if we are also willing to set aside our personal differences in opinion, the differences that we have in our economic perspectives, and it is a bigger problem that we should solve together, right? So, just a single internet exchange, there might not be so much you can do, but working together in the ecosystem, places like this, we can definitely discuss and think about solutions. Well, I'm CTO. Of course, I prefer to look at technical solutions and solutions that we can achieve by collaborating. So if we talk about neutrality, I think that a neutral internet exchanges around the world could provide an independent ecosystem of interconnectivity services, right? This was also a thought that came back on the Day Zero event of MENOG. I would say that if we would get more local IXPs and that it would be easier to connect them together, right, we could grow the internet ecosystem faster and make sure that we keep traffic more local. For instance, take a couple of European internet exchanges. How hard would it be to actually connect those, right, with cheap interconnectivity? Make sure that we use software-defined networking, so we use open APIs like IX API, right, and that we, for instance, build on the architecture that Gaia-X is trying to propose, to make sure that it's very easy for customers to log in one portal and make sure that the access is interconnected, right? One use case for this is if you're a scale-up company and you have developed a digital service, you connect to one internet exchange, you get access to a lot of internet exchanges, right? And then you can monitor in what regions your service is being used the most. If there's a lot of growth in one region, you can always decide to optimize your connectivity by connecting directly to that internet exchange. And if this is a model that will work, right, it should be expandable to other internet exchanges as well. And I think this is a model that could also work very well here in this region. Looking forward, if you were a neutral internet exchange, what is the kind of innovation? What are the kind of services that you could provide in the future? At AMS-IX, we learned that what's especially valued about us as an association is that we can manage to be a neutral partner of basically competing companies. So if you look at data, it is definitely the new gold or the new oil, if you want. And however, still only 1% of all the data that's being created is ever reused. Now, there can be a lot of reasons and good reasons for that, right? If it's personal data, for instance, we have a lot of legislation in place even to make sure that this data is kept safe, right? We don't want personal data to be shared in any way. But there is a lot more data. For instance, cities, they have a lot of sensor data, right? These systems are usually created with public money. So it only makes sense that a city tries to open up this data for its citizens, but also innovative companies that can use this data to improve life in the city, the smart city paradigm. So there are a lot of use cases in which we think that the exchange of data can be really beneficial. On the other hand, there is a lot of fear to share data because it's uncontrolled, right? What if I give you a USB stick with some important data? You give me some money, but I don't know what's going to happen with my data, right? So that's not a good way to share data. In building a data exchange, we really think about the technology and the processes, the architecture to bootstrap the data sharing economy. AMS-IX is part of AMDEX. It's the Amsterdam Data Exchange. It's a consortium of a couple of organizations, including SURF and the University of Amsterdam and the Amsterdam Economic Board. And this is like a picture of the high-level architecture that they come up with. So we do two things at the same time. We work on use cases and we work on the architecture. And this is the kind of roles and the functions that we see within this data sharing ecosystem. And now the challenge is to have part of these of this architecture implemented with software, right? So it's an actual software development to create, for instance, the trust broker, a legal engine, an audit engine, a discovery broker. We envision a marketplace where people can offer data sets. They are in control about the way that this data is being shared. For instance, it should not leave the country. For instance, it should be anonymized. For instance, I have to pre-approve the algorithms that you want to apply to this data. Those are the kind of things that you should be able to control if you want to have the trust to share data. Now, how is this trust organized? It's at the top level. We want generic agreements, templates, and schemes in a certified way. And we think internet exchanges in the future can play an important role, not just pushing packets, but also being this trusted anchor in the data sharing economy. A couple of use cases that we're working on. We're working together with KLM. They're doing maintenance on the Boeings, right? And this is a lot of, I think it's a couple of terabit of data from each flight that come out of the systems. And based on this data, the maintenance can be improved by machine learning. But having this data from all users of for instance, Boeing airplanes can improve this data. But then these different airlines should be able to work together. And they don't want to because they are afraid that they might help a competitor in this way. So a data exchange could be a solution to resolve this. Upper right, you see what we call the marineterrein. It's now a place where there's a lot of new, small, innovative organizations that are starting services, and they have a lot of IoT devices measuring everything, the public that goes there. And they monitor crowds, and there's a lot of things they can do, and they want to build on each other's data. So they created this platform to share data under certain requirements. And lower right is an example of a research data exchange. If you get paid to do a research and you spend, so you have to be a PhD in 3 or 4 years, you spend 1.5 years collecting all kinds of data, that data might be very valuable to someone else who can build on that data. But then you also need to be in control about the way that you share this data. A bit further away, and this might be, it's always challenging to talk about the quantum technology. If we talk about quantum technology, we usually talk about one of 3 use cases. It's either quantum computing, quantum communications, or quantum sensing. So if we talk about quantum computers, then we're talking about the development of chips that of qubits, that have qubits, and that can potentially in the future do or execute algorithms that are not possible to execute on today's hardware. Right? You might know that the internet pushes bits, which can have a value of 0 and 1. That's a classical bit. A qubit, however, can take a superposition of these values. Like in the realm of quantum information theory, you can put a qubit in a certain position, in a certain superposition, where it holds the value 0 or 1 until you measure it, because then the quantum state collapses. Right? And this is all physics, right? It's long thought of as just being a complicated part of physics. But in the 80s, I think, earliest thoughts came about of trying to use these physical properties to actually do computing in a different way. And it meant that we now have algorithms that can solve problems with quantum computing that are not solvable with classical computers in the same time frame, right? And this is what scares a lot of people. So if the quantum computers get developed well enough, right, and this might also take up to 10 years before that's the case, then we achieve quantum supremacy. That means that we have a quantum computer that can do better than any of the classical computers available today or at that point. And we have to be specific. This is just for certain types of computation. It's for a fast Fourier transform if you're interested. But this is actually the part that can crack the current encryption of today. So possibly if you've heard about quantum technology, it's often about cryptography, quantum cryptography or post-quantum cryptography, which is addressing the question, if we want to keep the information that we now have encrypted safe for years to come, for more than 10 years to come, then we might have to take into consideration the way that we have encrypted it. Because if quantum computers become available in about 10 years, then the encryption will be useless, right? So this is why a lot of companies are already thinking about new ways to encrypt their data, and this is what is called post-quantum cryptography. Another one is quantum key distribution. That's an application of the second pillar, the quantum communication. Quantum key distribution is a protocol to share just a regular key, right? Between Alice and Bob, you usually see the example. And having this, it's just using the basic symmetric cryptography that we know today, but the way that these keys are shared between Alice and Bob is done in a way that there can be no eavesdropper. Right. So, if someone would look at the communication of the process of distributing the keys, then it's noticeable. And if you see in the protocol that you see a certain statistical feature, there's more ones than zeros that you measure, then it means that you discard this information, you discard this key, you don't use it because you can be certain that someone was eavesdropping the conversation. So this is the basis of quantum key distribution, right? So it's not a new form of encryption, but it's making sure that the keys are shared in a way that is non-observable by anybody else. This is an application that's there today. It's like a front runner of the quantum services that we can think of. Quantum sensing, I won't go in too much, but you can also use some quantum mechanical effects, which enable or much more precise measurements than with current hardware. Right? So you can circumvent certain physical limitations that you have with classical measuring equipment. In Europe, we have the Horizon Europe program, and part of it is it's funding the Quantum Internet Alliance. And they have a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. Within 7 to 10 years, they want to have quantum communication over European distances, meaning over 1,000 kilometers, like from Amsterdam to Barcelona, for instance. And how they envision this is that with quantum communication, you want to connect these qubits. So you have different processing nodes on two sides, and the big problem at the moment is you can get qubits in the shape of a photon into a glass fiber, right? But what you want is that you create a state of entanglement, which is a quantum mechanical effect, between two qubits. And this state of entanglement doesn't last long. The quality of this entanglement is so that it's such that it diminishes very fast, right? So you can do just very short distances for now. And this is why we need repeaters in between. So first focus of the Quantum Internet Alliance is to research how and to build these quantum repeaters. Because without these quantum repeaters, we're confined to very small distances, and this dream of creating a quantum internet that can cover or span the world will never happen. So how is an internet exchange involved? Well, as I was saying a couple of times, the time frame that we're looking for now is between 5 and 10 years, so it's really early. But there are a lot of questions that are already being discussed, use cases, and also the problems that will arise if you want to build a quantum internet next to the current internet. People are thinking about the protocols that we should use or the way that you should deploy the quantum service. And for me, it's a very important question. What would be a quantum internet exchange? Can we, for instance, be the central hub, making sure that we create entanglement between two nodes? Another technology, final technology I would like to mention, which builds on the sustainability pillar, is integrated photonics. There's quite some investment being done in the Netherlands on integrated photonics. The University of Eindhoven is working on that. And maybe you also know the ION Global Forum, which is, there's some NTT people in the room, they are probably aware of it. But I think the basic idea for us, or the most important application of integrated photonics, is in optics, right? So this picture shows that what we want to achieve is that we get the electrical part of our circuits as small as possible, right? So we want the optical path to be as long as possible. So you see that in different types of technology, from the top to the bottom, the path of a fiber coming in, connectors, and to the chips is becoming shorter and shorter. And this has positive effect on the energy use, and it also circumvents some problems that we have if we want to get the bandwidth up. So there is one promise, and I can't verify it, but it's definitely like it would be a huge step for us towards a more sustainable digital infrastructure. If we can use 100 times less power, if we can boost the capacity of a single fiber and of a single chip and optics by 125 times, and that we also lower latency. So this is not the latency of photons traveling across distance, like kilometers, so across fibers, but this is the latency internal in the chips. So I put a picture there on the roadmap for integrated photonics, and on the top level you see that they're working on transceivers, 100 gig, 400 gig, which should be available within the next 4 or 5 years. There's about 100, 200 million euros going into this research in the Netherlands only, and I'm really looking forward to some of these results. So the question that I want to leave with you is, how will the internet improve societies in the Middle East? And I'm really looking forward to talking to you in person after this talk to discuss that. Meantime, be the exchange you want to see in this world. Shukran. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much. My name is Nada Al-Wadi. I am a researcher of internet governance, a PhD student at Virginia Tech. And I wanted to ask you, you talked about internet neutrality as one of the pillars that you guys focus on. I wanted to basically take this further. There is some literature on how internet exchanges basically contribute to the digital divide, and how some areas around the world might be somehow ignored in terms of internet access. Obviously, the political economy, the global political economy, by default marginalize some areas around the world, and you as exchanges, as private entities, might be part of that system as well. So I actually wonder if you can elaborate more on what contributes to your decisions when you open exchanges in some areas, if the economic factor is the only one, if there are other factors or other, I guess, stakeholders who might influence that. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, so first, one small question back. So what do you mean when you say internet exchanges are like a private entity? So AMS-IX, for instance, is an association, right? So we are fully owned by an association.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we are not for profit.
Yes.
Okay, so we also don't have, so we're not for profit, not for loss. Of course, we need to sustain our organization, right? Pay the people that work for us, right? But there is no, it's the members that decide where any surplus money is going, right? So, and maybe that is part of like what influences our mission, right? It's important to. For us, it's as one of the biggest internet exchanges. It's of course important to extend the reach of what we're doing. I think we can achieve more on online safety, on sustainability, if we are a bigger player in the ecosystem, right? So that's maybe one part to, or one reason, an important reason to operate globally, right? But I don't believe that just opening exchanges anywhere without really thinking about what the impact is going to be locally is a very bright idea. Right? It's definitely not the goal to have the most AMS-IX internet exchanges around the world. Also, I think it's not worth building an internet exchange somewhere if you not also invest in the local community, right? And I really believe that at some point these local communities should even be able to carry that internet exchange themselves, right? So, so we talked about this on day zero. You were also present.
Fascinating. Yeah. But what if the global communities are not advanced enough to push for that? Who, like, you know, the digital divide is a very valid discussion here. Yeah. Because by default, it is not equal. The system is not equal. Some areas are marginalized. They don't have the capacity to actually build an exchange. So anyways, but that's a fascinating discussion.
And that's where we should help, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
And exactly those are the important reason to go to a certain region, right? So we've seen transit pricing also in this region dropping by about 9% annually, right? Which is, I think, good for lowering internet costs for everybody. Like if we can collaborate and to achieve those kind of results, I think IXPs can have a big role to play in improving internet and society.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Hello, Hisham Ibrahim, Ruben to see. Thanks, Ruben, for the talk. It was really nice. This is more of a comment than a question, but I very much appreciated the bits that you shared about quantum networking specifically. It's been something that we have been also at the RIPE NCC participating in and working with people like the Alliance, the Quantum Alliance that you mentioned, and others. And I would love to see more happening in the Middle East in this area. We organized a hackathon earlier this month, and we had participation from the Netherlands, Poland, Italy, Ireland, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. But we didn't manage to get anybody from the Middle East here, and it would be great if through your contacts and the work that you're doing in the region here, if you can also spread that message, and if we can identify people from the Middle East that are interested in this, to really see what we can do in this area. So thank you for the message.
I'd love to cooperate. Thank you.